vyoma-samskrta-pathasalayaः लघुसिद्धान्त कौमुदी द्वितीयभागे अस्मिन् विंशे वाग्वर्धिनी वर्गे सर्वेषां स्वागतम्। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं नत्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां गुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदीम्। अष्टाध्याय्याः आरम्भं कुर्मः। ये वक्तुमिच्छन्ति कृपया हस्तमुन्नयन्तु। नलिनी भगिनी।
नमस्ते भगिनी। तिथिवृद्धिपरस्मैपदेषु अतोल्रान्तस्य वदव्रजहलन्तस्याचः नेति ण्यन्तक्षणश्वसजागृनिष्वेदितां ऊर्णोत्तेर्विभाषा अतो हलादेर्लघोः नेड्वशीकृति तितुत्र तथसि सुसरकसेषु च एका च उपदेशेऽनुदात्तात् श्रीयुकः किति सनिग्रहगुहोश्च कृसृभृवृस्तुदृश्रुवो लिटि श्वेदितो निष्ठायां यस्य विभाषा आदितश्च विभाषा भावादिकर्मणोः क्षुब्धस्वान्तध्वान्तलग्नं लिष्टविरिब्धफाण्टबाढानि मन्थमनस्तमसक्ता विस्पष्टस्वरानायासभृशेषु धृषिषसि वैयात्ये दृढस्थूलबलयोः प्रभौ परिवृढः।
सम्यक्। परिवृढः ढ महाप्राणः। सम्यक्। परिवृढः नास्ति, परिवृढः।
परिवृढः द्वित्वं नास्ति।
द्वित्वं नास्ति तत्र। सम्यक् सम्यक् उक्तम्। विजया हेतिराजन् पठति वा?
आं महोदय, श्रूयते। नमस्कारः महोदय।
पठतु।
युवोर् द्वितीयपादः अस्ति। द्वितीयपादः अस्तु। सिचिवृद्धिपरस्मैपदेषु अतोल्रान्तस्य वदव्रजहलन्तस्याचः नेटिः नेटि हिम्यत् एकवारम् अपि वदतु महोदय। म्यन्तक्षणस्व जागृनिष्वेदिताम् ऊर्णोतेर्विभाषा अतो हलादेर्लघोः नेड्वशीकृति तितुत्र तथसि सुरकसेषु च एका च उपदेशोऽनुदात्तात् श्रीयुक्तिति सनिग्रहगुहोश्च शुश्रुवो लिटि स्वीदितो निष्ठायां यस्य विभाषा आदितच्च विभाषा भावादिकर्मणोः क्षुब्धस्वान्तध्वान्त लग्न म्लिष्ट विरिब्ध पाण्ट पाडा बाडा निमन्तः मनस्तमस् सक्त विस्पष्ट स्वरानायासभृशेषु दृषि वैयात्ये दृढस्थूलबलयोः प्रभौ परिवृढः कृच्छ्रगहनो वृढः। धन्यवादः महोदय।
हेमा श्रीधर।
नमस्ते भगिनी। सिचिवृद्धिः परस्मैपदेषु अतोल्रान्तस्य वदव्रजहलन्तस्याचः नेटि म्यन्तक्षणश्वसजागृनिष्वेदिताम् ऊर्णोतेर्विभाषा अतो हलादेर्लघोः नेड्वशिकृति तितुत्र तथसि सुसरकसेषु च एका च उपदेशेऽनुदात्तात्। भगिनी अत्र श्रुक इति दृश्यते, श्युकः वा श्र अस्ति वा?
श्रुर्युकः श्रुर्युकः
अन्य पुस्तके अन्यस्मिन् पुस्तके तत् श्यु इति दृष्टवती
न
अतः।
न अत्र श्री उकः यण् सन्धिः भवति अतः श्रियुकः इत्येव।
ओके, श्रियुकः श्युक किति श्र्युक किति सनिगरः गुहोश्च कृसृभृ भृस्तृ स्तु द्रुसृ श्रुवो लिटि श्वीदितो निष्ठायां यस्य विभाषा आदितश्च विभाषा भावादिकर्मणोः क्षुब्धस्वान्तध्वान्तलग्नं लिष्टविरिब्ध फाण्टबाढानि मन्थमनस्तमस्सक्ता विस्पष्ट स्वरानायासभृशेषु दृशिशसि वैयात्ये दृढस्थूलबलयोः प्रभौ परिवृढः।
सम्यक्। अग्रे गच्छामः। लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदी उमा भगिनी।
नमस्ते भगिनी। चतुरनडुहोरामुदात्तः अनयोः आम् स्यात् सर्वनामस्थाने परे सावनडुहः अस्य नुम् स्यात् सौ परे अनड्वान् अम् सम्बुद्धौ हे अनड्वन् हे अनड्वाहौ हे अनड्वाहः अनडुहः अनडुहा वसुस्त्रं सुध्वं स्वनडुहां दः सान्तवस्वन्तस्य स्रसान्देश्च स्रंसादेश्च दः स्यात् पदान्ते अनडुभ्याम् इत्यादि सान्तेति किं विद्वान् पदान्ते किं स्रस्तं ध्वस्तं।
सम्यक्, धन्यवादः। अन्ये केऽपि पठितुमिच्छन्ति? सुधा श्रीकान्त
श्रूयते वा महोदय?
सहेस्साडस्सः साड्रूपस्य सहेस्सस्य मूर्धन्यादेशः तुराषाट् तुराषाड् तुरासाहौ तुरासाहः तुराषाढ्भ्यामित्यादि दिव औत् दिविति प्रातिपदिकस्य औत् स्यात् सौ सुद्यौः सुदिवौ दिव उत् दिवोन्तादेश उकार स्यात् पदान्ते सुत्युभ्याम् इत्यादि।
धन्यवादः। शारदा गोपाली।
अस्तु भगिनि। चत्वारः चतुरः चतुर्भिः चतुर्भ्यः षट् चतुर्भ्यश्च येभ्य आमौ नुडागमः रसाभ्यां नो नः समानपदे स्पष्टम् अचो रहाभ्यां द्वे लघु कौमुदी 60 अचः पराभ्यां रेप हकाराभ्यां परस्य यरो द्वे वास्तः चतुर्णां रोः सुपि रोरेव विसर्गः सुपि षत्वं शस्य द्वित्वे प्राप्ते शरोचि अचिपरे शरो न द्वे स्तः चतुर्षु।
सम्यक्, धन्यवादः। So I'll try to quickly recap what we studied in the videos from 7.5 to 7.8. Right? So we are continuing with Hakaranta Shabdas. Right? So in the first week, we saw the general Hakaranta Shabdas. where we had hodhaha, padante dhatvam bhavati as the utsarga, followed by dader dhatur ghaha, where gha is given as an apavada to dha if the dhatu starts with dakara. We also saw vadruha muhashnu hashniham. For those specific 4 dhatus, we have both ghatva and dhatva. Then there was the shabda vishwavah, where vah dhatu, the vah, wherever we have it, vaha ut iti samprasaranam bhavati. Right? So vishvauha, vishvauha, etc. were the special factors. Next, he takes another very special shabda called anaduh shabda, a very ancient shabda which is found widely used in the Vedas for the bull. The cow and the bull were very, very important animals for the Vedic civilization. So even in the Vedas, we find lot of names for cows. That is a female cow. There is Dhenu, there is Surabhi. There are multiple names, each of which signify different things. Similarly, for the bull, there are multiple names. One of them is the Anaduh. So it is, as we saw in the video, as per the Paninian system, there is no derivation as such, but the meaning is given as Anaha Vahati. That which draws a cart is Anadvan, or the bull. So Anaduha is a very special shabda for Vyakarana because there are multiple sutras which mention the word Anaduh specifically. It is also taken in multiple ganas. So when we come to the Subanta Prakriya, the major karya given for Anaduh shabda in Sarvanamasthana is an agama called the Am agama, Akara agama, designated as a myth. So being myth, it is added after the last ach, midachontyat paraha, after the final ach. So ukarat paraha akaraha. So you get anadu ah. Once we do the yanadesha, we get anadvah. So anadvahu, anadvahaha, anadvaham, anadvahu. So sarvanamasthane pare chatur and anaduh, both shabdas get the am agama. Then the immediate next sutra says sambuddhau, in sambuddhi, that is sambodhana prathama ekavachana, instead of akaragama we get akaragama, so it becomes anadvah. Then again in both the supratyaya and sambuddhi we have the sutra savanaduha, which gives a num agama. Okay, so this is a very, very rare case where we do 2 agamas to the same particle. Right? So to the anga, we first do the am or agama followed by a num agama. So a and n. So you get anadvan h or anadvan h. Sulopa by halnyabhyo dirghat, and then hakara lopa by sanyogantasya lopaha. So we get anadvan and he anadvan. Rest of the Sarvanamasthana, it is only amagama. From shas, there is a karya for the padasamya. Anaduh being hakara, by default it should have been hodhaha, but by vasusramsu dhvamsu anaduham daha padante anaduh shabdasya dakaradesha bhavati. So hakara is replaced by dakara to give anadudbhyam, anadudbhihi, etc. At the end we have chartva for anadutsu. Right? Any questions with anaduh, you can ask. Okay. So Vrishabha also carries cart. Yeah, I mean, if you have other synonyms for anaduh, they will take forms as per, say, Vrishabha is a normal akaranta shabda like Rama shabda. So there is no the samanarthaka for shabdas when we are taking in Vyakarana, it is only that shabda which will get the meaning, not synonyms of the shabda. Now the question, by showing the prakriya of snih, Do we have to show the step from Shnih with the Sutra Dhatvadesha Saha? Technically not needed, because see, for Subanta Prakriya, we are assuming the Pratipadika, right? So when it gets to the Pratipadika stage, it is already Sniha, because right at the Dhatu, the moment it gets Dhatu Samya, you get Dhatvadesha Saha. The quip is added only after that. So Shnuh or Shnih becomes Snuh Sniha, and then you have quip, then the lopa of quip, and then only we get to the Pratipadika stage where we have Sneha. So technically it is not needed, but the Laghu Kaumudi is giving the sutra to bring in that concept. Right? So we just show it, right? Not needed. Very strictly saying, we assume the Pratipadika. We don't go at this stage, we are not going behind the Pratipadika, though we are understanding it. For the Prakriya, you can start with the Pratipadika. That's okay. We will move ahead. The next Shabda, the last Hakaranta Shabda, is the Turasah. Again, Turasah is an ancient name, one of the names of Indra. Right? So here, Padante, we always have Hodhaha, because the Utsarga, Hakarasya Sthane Dhakaraha, and again Jhalam Jashonte also applies. The special sutra for Turasa is Sahesada Saha, which says Sahadhatu when it takes the form Sad. That is after we have applied Dhatva and Jashtva. So we have the form called Sad. Then the Sakara gets converted to Shakara, Murdhanyadesha. So we get Turashat, Turashad, Turashadbhyam, Turashatsu, etc. Where there is no Dhatva, there is also no Shatva. So Turasahu, Turasaha have only Sakara. So it's pretty simple. There's nothing special. So Supratyaya, you have the optional Dhudagama. So you get Turashatsu and Turashatsu. Next we have a Vakaranta Shabda. So using a Samasa of Diva Shabda. Shobhana Dyauhu Yasya Saha. Sudiv. So Diva Shabda has two specific sutras to it. One is Diva Out and the other is Diva Ut. So Diva Out applies only in Supratyaya, where Vakara is replaced by Aukara. So Sudi Au. Then you have the Yan to get Sudyau. Rutva Visarga Sudyauhu. Sudivau Sudivaha. Padante Vakarasya Ukara Deshaha Bhavati. So you get Sudyubhyam Sudyubhihi. So nothing else special. It is all just joining the Prakriti and Pratyaya. The last Shabda we saw in this section was the Chatur Shabda, which is a Nitya Bahuvachananta Shabda, meaning 4. So for Chatur, Chaturanaduho Ramudattaha is what we also saw in Anaduha. There is an Am Agama in Sarvanama Sthana. So Chatu R as doing Yan, we get Chatvaras and Chatvaraha. There is nothing in Chaturaha, Chaturbhihi, Chaturbhyaha. In Am, there is the sutra Shat Chaturbhyascha, which gives a Nudagama for Am. So far we had only one sutra, which was Hrasvanadya Ponut, which applies only in Ajantas. Hrasva, Nadi, Aap, all are Ajantas. In Halantas, we have Shat and Chatur. So Shat refers to the Shat Samyaka Shabdas, which is Panchan, Shash, Saptan, Ashtan, Navan, Dashan. These 6 numbers are given the Samya Shat. So in all of them, we have the Nakara in Am, Nudagama. Also for the Chatur Shabda. So Chatur Nam, there is Natva by Rashabhyam Nona Samanapade, and also Dvitva for the Nakara by Achorahabhyam Dve. So Chaturnam and Chaturnam, 2 forms. Then in Chaturshu, actually in Prakriya we are doing nothing other than Adesha Pratyayoho, but he raises the possibility of 2 karyas and negates them. First possibility is Repa getting converted to Visarga by Kharavasanayor Visarjaniya. Because there is Padasamya, Chatur and Su. So Padante Rephasya Visargaha Bhavati. Iti Visarge Prapte Niyama Sutram Asti. We have a Niyama Sutra called Roho Supi. Sup here refers to only the Saptami Bahuvachana Pratyaya. So when followed by the Sup Pratyaya, if Repa has to be converted to Visarga, that Repa must originate from Rutva. That is Sakara being converted to Rutva. So if it is a Repa which is existing originally in the Shabda, we have lots of Shabdas. There is Chatur, there is Gir Shabda, there is Pur Shabda, so on. So if it is not from Ru, then there is no Visarga. That is the effective restriction imposed by Rosupi. So since this Repa is originally in the Shabda Chatur, it is not derived from Ru, you cannot apply Kharavasanayor Visarjaniyaha here. Operation of Kharavasanayor Visarjaniyaha is restricted by Roho Supi. That is the first one. The second possibility he raises is the Dvitva of Shakara by Achorahabhyam Dve. Just like we did Dvitva for Nakara in Chaturunam, can we do a Dvitva for Shakara by Achorahabhyam Dve? Achahparabhyam Rephahakarabhyam Parasya Yaraha Dve Vastaha. All conditions are satisfied, but there is a Nishedha Sutra which says Sharaha Achi. If there is a Repa followed by a Shar letter, which in turn is followed by Ach letter, then there is no Dvitva for the Shar. So Shakara Dvitva is prevented by it. We just join Chatur and Su doing Adesha Pratyayoho to get Chaturushu. So any questions you can raise? Can we also say Samprasaranam instead of Diva Ut? Is a question. You may say, but then see, Samprasarana is used when there is some purpose to be achieved through Samprasarana, right? Like there is Purva Rupa, if there is an Ach followed, it is merged into the Samprasarana to get that one. And there are some karyas, say Samprasarana may get a Dirgha in some contexts and so on. So there is always a specific purpose for using a Samprasarana, right? So here, because Samprasarana is a longer term, to say Diva Samprasaranam is much longer than saying Diva Ut. Okay. So there is no purpose served here by using Samprasarana because there is no specific karya which is achieved by Samprasarana here. So it is always followed by Padanta. There is always a Hal letter. So Samprasaranacha Purva Rupa will not apply. And there is nothing else we are actually doing here using Samprasarana. There's a question, Vaha Ut, how only Vakara gets U? I'm not sure of the intention of the question. Vaha Ut Samprasaranam Bhavati. There is a Samprasarana, Ut is a Samprasarana, and Samprasarana by definition has to replace only the Yan letter. So it replaces Vakara. There is no other Yan letter in Vah, only Vakara. There's a question on Santa iti kim, which we will take as a part of Vagvardhini. Anyway, we have the question. Anything else? Kumar Shankar Mohre, you have a question or you want to answer? Vishwavah ityatra vakaradvayam asti iti prashnaha. Samprasaranam tu vahaha eva vidhiyate. Nirdishyamanasya adeshaha bhavanti. Nirdishyamanam tu tatra vaha ityeva. Tatra purvapade yanvarnaha asti chet tasya na bhavati. Bhasamya vishwavah ityasya asti tatrapi yatha nirjara ityatra जरायाः जरसादेशः जर अंशस्यैव भवति न तु निर्जर इत्यस्य। तत्रापि निर्दिश्यमानं तु वाह् तस्यैव सम्प्रसारणं भवति ऊट्. There is a statement, not a question. Gunanishedha and vriddhi for vaha oot happens only if there is a purvapada. Yes, you need the, once you have vaha, once there is a purvapada, you get the pratyaya. The pratyaya itself, there is upapada in presence of a specific upapada, and that will undergo vriddhi with the oot. अस्तु अग्रे गच्छामः. वाग्वर्धिन्यां ये उत्तरं दातुम् इच्छन्ति हस्तमुन्नयन्तु. त्रिपुरसुन्दरी भगिनी.
हरि ओं महोदय.
आम्.
श्रूयते किल?
आम्.
अनुडः इति शब्दः अनः इति शकटं वहति इति शब्दः ऋषभस्य पर्यायवाचक शब्दः. अनुडः शब्दः पाणिनि मते तु अव्युक्तपन्न शब्दः एव. अत्र चतुरनुडः राम उदात्तः सप्तमाध्याये प्रथमपादे 98 सूत्र चतुर् अनुडः अनयोः सर्वनाम स्थाने परे अंगस्य आम आगमः भवति इति. एतस्मिन् संदर्भे अनुडुः शब्दे अन्य एकं सूत्रं प्रवर्तते, सानुडवः. एतदपि सप्तम अध्याये प्रथम पादे 2 सूत्रः. अनुडः सुप्रत्यये परे अंगस्य नुमागमः भवति. उभयम् अपि अंगकार्यं सौ परे. निरवकाशात् सौ आमं बाधित्वा नुमेव करणीयं वा इति अस्ति चेत्, किन्तु भाषायां प्रयोगे तु उभयम् इष्यते, अनुडवान् इति. अतः सावनुडः इत्यत्र आच्छो नद्योर्नुम सूत्रात् आत् इति अनुवर्तते. आत् इति अस्य पंचमी. अतः अनुडः शब्द सुप्रत्यये परे अंगस्य अवर्णात् परः नुमागमः भवति इति सूत्रार्थ फलति. अतः आदौ आम आगमः परः नुमागमः भवति इति. एतदेव प्रयत्नं कृतं.
सम्यक् उक्तं, सम्यगेव प्रतिपादितं. तत्र अनडुः शब्दस्य चतुरनडुः रामुदात्तः इत्यनेन सर्वनामस्थाने परे आम आगमः विधीयते. सुप्रत्यये परे तु सावनडुः इत्यनेन नुमागमः विधीयते. So the normal case when we have this, so am is a wider karya, it is applicable across all sarvanama sthanas, whereas num has only one place, which is the supratyaya. So under normal circumstance we would compare each and do numagama in su and do the amagama in the rest of the cases, right? But you going by the prayoga, so if we do that, the form in prathama ekavachana would be anadun, right? So you do anadu, numagama, then sulopa, halopa, so you get anadun, which is not the shabda we need. So there is a anishta rupa apatti. So we will end up with a undesired form because the prayoga has anadvan. So we have to see how to fit in both am and num. Only when we do both do we end with anadvan. So for that, what we do is in the sutra savanaduhaha, we take the anuvritti of at from an earlier sutra. So 2 sutras before we have Achi Nadyor Num. So At is an Anuvritti. At is Panchami of A. So Avaranat Paraha Numagamaha Bhavati. We say that the Numagama will be added after the Akara in the Anga. So now to get the Akara, it is not possible without the Am. So using that Anuvritti will mean that the Amagama applies first, and then after the Akara, we get the Numagama. So based on it, we get the correct form, which is Anadvan. Right? Any questions on this? So these are the steps. So again, just to clarify, I am not giving the steps in the exercise document because I want you to think. Etavanti dinani asmabhihi abhyasaha krataha. So you have to think, come up with the outline, and then build on the outline. That is how you prepare for Vagvardhini. You have to think what are the steps you need, and then you have to see how you will explain those steps. So when we are discussing, if you want, you can note it down, and then each of you should either write or orally practice the questions for each Vagvardhini. That is the expectation, right? Yadyapi samayabhavat varge ekasyaiva avakashah bhavati sarvaihi tatra abhyasah karaniyah ityeva apeksha. Dvitiyah prashnah santa iti kim vidvan asyaha panktehe artha vivaranam. Bindu, Manoj.
श्रूयते वा? अत्र वसुस्रंसुर्ध्वस्वनडुः अनडुहां दः इति सूत्रम् अस्ति. तत्र सान्दवस्वन्तस्य स्रंसादेश्च दः स्याद् पदान्ते इति सूत्रार्थः. तत्र सान्तः इति तत्र एतेषां पदानाम् अन्ते दकारान्तः भवति इति सूत्रार्थः. विद्वस् भ्याम् इति अस्ति चेत् विद्वद्भ्यां तादृशं भवति. अत्र सान्दवस्वन्तस्य इति अस्ति. तत्र सान्ता इति किम् इति अत्र सकारान्तस्य वस्वन्तस्य इति अस्ति. वस्वन्तः सान्तः अस्ति चेत् ससजुषोरुः इत्यतः सा इति अनुवर्तते इति. तत्र सा इति सकारः इति अस्ति. सः इति सकारः इति अस्ति. अतः वस्वन्तः शब्दः यदा सकारान्तः अस्ति चेत् तस्य पदान्ते दकारान्तादेशः भवति इति सूत्रार्थः. स्रंस् ध्वंस् अनडुः एतेषां पदान्ते दकारादेशः भवति इति अस्ति. तत्र ससजुषोरुः इत्यतः सः इति अनुवर्तते. विशेषणम् अस्ति. तत्र विशेषणम् इति वसु इत्यस्यैव भवति. स्रंसुध्वसोः अव्यभिचारात् अनडुहः असम्भावात् तत्र न सम्बध्यते इत्यपि अस्ति. तत्र वसु इत्यस्य एव विशेषणमस्ति इति व्याख्याने वदति. तत्र किमर्थं वसु इत्यस्यैव इति तत्र किमपि विशेषणं भवति चेत् तत्र किमपि उपयोगः सार्थः भवति इति अस्ति. विशेषणस्य उपयोगः न करणीयः. वृथा किमपि विशेषणस्य उपयोगः नास्ति इति नियमः अस्ति. तद् व्यभिचारः इति वदति. तत्र उदाहरणार्थं तत्र पीतवर्णस्य हरिद्रम् इति वदामः चेत् सर्वदा हरिद्रं पीतमेव भवति, अतः पीतवर्णस्य इति पुनः न वदनीयम् इति। अतः एतत् व्यभिचारः नास्ति इति एकं कार्यम्। अतः विशेषणरहितं अव्यभिचारम् इति अस्ति वदति चेत् विशेषण रहितम् अस्ति चेदपि तत्र सम्भवेदेव। तत्र अतः व्यभिचारः अस्ति चेदेव विशेषणम् उपयोक्तव्यम् इति एकः विशेषः अस्ति। अनन्तरं द्वितीयम् अस्ति सम्भवः इत्यपि भवति। तत्र सम्भवः इति तत्र इदानीं रक्तवर्णस्य किमपि हरिद्रम् इति वदामः चेत् तादृशं सम्भवम् एव न वदति। हरिद्रम् इति सर्वदा पीतवर्णमेव भवति, अतः असम्भवम् एव भवति एतत्। अतः स्रंसु ध्वंसोः अव्यभिचाराद् इत्युक्ते स्रंसु शब्दस्य ध्वंसु शब्दस्य च पदान्ते सर्वदापि सकारः एव भवति, अतः अत्र वक्तव्यं नास्ति एव। अतः अव्यभिचाराद् इदं किमस्ति सान्तम् इति किमपि विशेषण संस्कृध्वंसाः विशेषणं न सम्बध्यते इति अस्ति। अतः अव्यभिचाराद् विशेषणं न भवति। अतः अनडुः शब्दस्य वदामः तत्र सम्बन्ध किमस्ति शब्दः कदापि तत्र सान्तं न भवत्येव, हकारः एव अन्ते भवति, अतः सर्वदा असम्भवः एव भवति। अतः असम्भवत्वात् तत्र सान्ता इति विशेषणम् अनडुः शब्दस्यापि न भवति। अनन्तरं अतः वसु इत्यस्य एव विशेषणं भवति इति। तत्र वसु इत्यस्य एव किमर्थं विशेषणम् इत्युक्ते तत्र विद्वस् शब्दं पश्यामः चेत् तत्र विद्वान् इति पद तत् वसुप्रत्ययान्तः शब्दः पदान्ते नकारः अस्ति, सकारः नास्ति। तत्र विद्वस् तत्र विद्वन् उगिदजां सर्वनामस्थाने धातोः इति नुमागमः भवति। अनन्तरं सान्द महतः संयोगस्य इति उपधादीर्घः विद्वान् भवति। अनन्तरं हल्ङ्गाभ्यो दीर्घात् सुदिस्य वृत्तं हल् इति विद्वांस्। अनन्तरं संयोगान्तस्य लोपः इति सलोपः विद्वान् इति भवति। अतः पदान्ते नकारः भवति, नकारः नास्ति। अतः तत्र दकारादेशः न इच्छति वयम्। अतः सान्दवस्वन्तस्य इति न वदामः चेत् तत्रापि विद्वान् इति कृते अत्र नकारस्य स्थाने वसुस्रंसु इति इत्यनेन दकारादेशः स्यादिति भवति। अतः सः इति अनुवर्त्य तत्र वस्वन्तस्य विशेषणम् इति रूपेण तत्र क्रियते। सकारान्तस्वं सकारान्तस्वम् अस्ति चेदेव दकारान्तः भवति। तादृशं विद्वान् इत्यत्र दकारादेशः न भवति।
बहु उत्तमम्, excellent understanding of the concepts. Okay. Very nice. And क्रमः अपि बहु उत्तमः आसीत्, the order of presentation बहु उत्तमम् तत्र. So just a lot of people had asked doubts about it, so I'll quickly explain briefly in English. So we have the sutra Vasu Sramsu Dhvams Vanaduham Udattaha, which says that Vasu, Sramsu, Dhvamsu and Anaduh. So there are 4 particles mentioned. These get Dakara at Padanta. So Vasu there is referring to words ending in a Pratyaya vasu. There are some pratyayas, kvasu, etc. So words ending in that, like vidvas, se divas, upeivas, etc. Srams, dhvams are dhatus. So kvibantas, you get srams, dhvams as the pada. And then anaduh is a separate pratipadika. So all these at padanta get dakara as adesha. Now the question here is about the anuvritti of saha from sasajushoruhu. So deliberately the Granthakara is taking the word saha, sa sajush. There are two parts there, sa and sajush. So sakarantasya sajush shabdasya cha ruhusyat padante is the meaning of sasajushoruhu. So from that he is taking the word sa and he is making it a visheshana to vasusramsu dhvamsvanaduham daha. So by yena vidhistarantase it becomes santa. But he says that this santa does not relate to all four particles. Generally, if you have a visheshana, if you say Ramakrishna unnatau or Rama Lakshmana Bharata Shatrughnaha Shuraha. So whenever there is a dvandva samasa and you apply a visheshana, it applies to all particles. That is the general thing we see, right? So all of them should be shuras. That is how it normally works. But in this context, he is saying Santa applies as a Visheshana only to Vasu, not to the other three. And he uses a logic to say Visheshana in Shastra especially. Forget Kavya. See, Kavya, we apply lots and lots of Visheshanas. That's a different thing. That is a beauty. There is a Shabda Madhurya and Artha Madhurya. That is different. But when we are talking about Shastric discussions, we don't give useless Visheshanas, right? Whenever there is a Visheshana, you are qualifying something. That qualification, that adjective should carry a purpose. What is that purpose? Bhedaka. Visheshana is called a Bhedaka, a differentiator. So that attribute should always be a differentiating attribute, right? So if all the students of a class are scoring above 40 and you pick up one student and say he has scored above 40, it doesn't make any sense, right? If you are using a differentiator, that means that there should be some to which it applies and some to which it does not apply. That is the only case where a Visheshana is Sarthaka. So there are two cases where a Visheshana will not be Sarthaka. One is called Avyabhichara. So Avyabhichara means the Visheshana applies to everything in the group that you are talking about. Whereas Asambhava means the Visheshana cannot apply to anything in the group that you are talking about. In both these cases, the Visheshana is meaningless because it cannot differentiate. As I said, if all students of the class have got 40 and plus, then saying 40 plus will not make any differentiation. It will just take the whole group. There is no differentiation. Whereas if not a single student has got above 40, again saying 40 plus doesn't serve any purpose because there is nothing to differentiate. Nobody has got it. So nobody getting it is called Asambhava. Everybody getting it is called Avyabhichara. In both these cases, having that 40 plus as a differentiator is pointless. If some people have got it, and if some people have not got it, that is when the differentiator or the Visheshana is useful or purposeful. So in this case, what he says is, Santa, though potentially it can apply to all four, it doesn't make any sense with Anaduha because Anaduha is never Sakaranta. There is no Sakara at all. So saying Santa Anaduh Shabda is a nonsensical statement because it never applies. Whereas for Srams and Dhvams, they are always Sakaranta. That is when you have the Padantatva. Srams itself is a Pada. They are always Sakaranta. The Sakara is not modified by anything else. So saying Sakaranta Srams, Sakaranta Dhvams is again not meaningful. So that is the case. That is why he is saying, I am isolating Vasu and applying the Visheshana Santa to only Vasu. What does that mean? That means that the Vasu Pratyayanta has cases where it is Sakaranta and where it is not Sakaranta. That is why we are differentiating Santa Vasvantasya Dakaraha Bhavati. So now the onus is on the Granthakara to show an example why this Visheshana is meaningful. Again, if Vasu is always Sakaranta, the whole effort is a waste. So he gives the example Vidvan. So she gave the derivation of Vidvan, which we will come to very soon. For now, in Supratyaya, we have the Vidvas Shabda. There is Numagama, there is Upadha Dirgha, Sulopa, and Sanyoganta Lopa. So you have finally the Vasvanta Shabda Vidvan, which is Vasvanta, but which is Nanta, which is not Santa. So in this context, we do not want Vasusram Sudhvam Swanaduhamdaha to apply. That is why he brings in the Visheshana of Santa and applies it only to Vasu Pratyayanta. Any questions on this? Okay, we will go ahead. Please give me just one moment. I'll be back. Okay. Anybody wants to try this one? Rose Supi iti Sutrarthaha. Bhagyalakshmi.
Namaste Bhagini.
Yes, please.
Roho Supi. Roho Shashti Ekavachanam. Supi Saptami Ekavachanam. Anuvrittihi Visarjaniyaha. Adhikaraha Padasya Purvatra Siddham Samhitayam. Anuvritti Sahitam Sutram Padasya Ruhu Supi Visarjaniyaha Samhitayam. Sutrarthaha Saptami Bahuvachana Supratyeye Pare Padanta Repasya Visargaha Bhavati. Yada Saha Repaha Ru Ityasmat Nirmitaha Bhavati. Natu Anyavarnat. Etat Niyamasutram Asti. Siddhe Sati Arabhyamano Vidhi Niyamaya Bhavati. Kharavasanayor Visarjaniyaha iti Sutrena Padanta Repasya Kharvarne Pare Visargadesha Prapte Prakrita Sutrena Saptami Bahuvachanasya Supratyeye Pare Saha Niyamyate. Roho Supi Visarjaniyaha. Rutvena Nushpannaha Yaha Repaha Tasya Supratyeye Pare Visargadesha Bhavati. Arthat Roho Nishpannaha Yaha Repaha Tasyaiva Natu Anyasya. Anyasya ityukte Sahajataya Shabde Repaha Asti Chet. Udaharanam Chatur iti Shabdasya Repaha Prakritya Vidyate Natu Roho Nishpannaha. Ataha Tat Shabda Prakriyayam Saptami Bahuvachane Supi Pare Roho Supi iti Repasya Visargaha Nayeva Bhavati. Dhanyavadaha Bhagini.
Samyak. Kutra Bhavati. Kimapi.
Sakaranta Payash Shabdaha.
Manas Payas ityadi. Sakaranta Shabdaha yatra Rutvam Bhavati tatra Visargaha Bhavati.
Dhanyavadaha Bhagini.
Samyak. So Sarvamapi Samyak Vivritam Asti. She has explained very clearly. So you have to, for any Niyama Sutra, you have to explain the Sutra. How is it Niyama? That is the first thing. So Siddhe Sati Arabhyamanaha Vidhihi Niyamaya Bhavati. How is it Siddha? How is it that the same thing is, we have already got it by some other Sutra? In this context, Kharavasanayor Visarjaniyaha already gives a Visarga for a Padanta Repa. So specifically saying Padanta Repa gets a Visarga when followed by Sup is not needed. So it is Siddha and therefore Niyama. What is the Niyama? Is that only the Repa of Ru gets Visarga and not other Repa. So what is the Prayojana? Is to avoid Visarga in cases where the Repa is not from Ru. Like in Chatur, where we originally have a Repa which is not derived from Ru. So there is no Visarga. That is the Prayojana of Rosupi, to prevent Visarga in Chaturshu. whereas it will allow visarga by kharavasanayor visarjaniyaha in cases like manassu or payassu, where the repa has been derived from ru by sasajushoruhu, basically. Right? So this is good. So we will next go to Jnanavardhini, where we will try to see the sutra ekacho bashobhash jhashantasyas dvoho. This is last week's portion, but we will see what the Siddhanta Kaumudi says about it. Right? So Siddhanta Kaumudi will have additional information to Laghu Kaumudi, which is generally useful. Right? So we will try to see what the Siddhanta Kaumudi says and how to understand it, just as an extension of what we have already understood. So there's one question before we get into this. So Ro Supi is limited only to Sup Pratyaya, that is 7-3, correct. It is only for the Saptami Bahuvachana Pratyaya. It is not the Sup Pratyahara. So for other cases, if possible, there may be Visarga. Okay. So the Nishedha or Rosupi is purely for the Saptami Bahuvachana Pratyaya. So we will move ahead now. As I said, Ekajo Bashobhash Jhashantasya Dhoho is a sutra. Asya sutrasya adhyanam asmabhihi Laghu Kaumudyam kritam. Siddhanta Kaumudyam idanim asya vishaye kim diyate iti kinchidiva pashyamaha. Adau tu tatra सूत्रार्थः दीयते समानः. लघु सिद्धांत कौमुद्याः सूत्रार्थः प्रायेण सिद्धांत कौमुद्याः एव स्वीकृतः. धातोरवयवः यः एकाच् झषन्तः तद् अवयवस्य बशः स्थाने भष् स्यात् सकारे ध्वशब्दे पदान्ते च इति सूत्रार्थः. पुनस्मरणार्थं पश्यामः. धातुः भवेत्, धातोः अवयवत्वेन एकाच् भवेत्. एकाच् इत्यस्य विवरणं दृष्टम्. एकः अच् यस्य सः, यस्मिन् समुदाये एकः अज् विद्यते सः एकाच्. सः एकाच् समुदायः झषन्तः भवेत्. झ भ घ ढ ध झष् इति प्रत्याहारः. झषन्तः एकाच् समुदायः. तस्मिन् समुदाये तद अवयवस्य बशः स्थाने, तत्र बश् वर्णः ब ग ड द एते चत्वारः वर्णाः सन्ति चेत् कस्य स्थाने भष् स्यात्. स्थानी अस्ति बश् वर्णः, आदेशः अस्ति भष्, भ घ ढ ध महाप्राणवर्णः. कदा भवति अयम् आदेशः इति चेत् सकारे परे धुक्षे इति दृष्टं. दुह् से इति भवति. तत्र दुघ् से इति दादेर्धातोर्घः इत्यनेन घत्वे कृते तत्र इदानीं सकारे परे दकारस्य धकारादेशे धुघ् धुग् से अग्रे धुक्षे इति भवति. ध्व शब्दे तत्र ध्व इत्यपि तिङन्तेषु प्रत्ययः अस्ति, आत्मनेपद प्रत्ययः. दुह् ध्वम् इत्यस्ति चेत् तत्र धुग्ध्वम् इत्यत्रापि भवति. पुनः पदान्ते अस्माकम् इदानीं सुबन्तप्रक्रियायां तु पदान्तत्वम् अस्ति, तत्रापि अयम् आदेशः भवति. दुह् शब्दस्य प्रथमैकवचनान्तं रूपं भवति धुक् इति. एवं दह् इत्यस्ति चेत् धक् इति भवति इत्यादि अस्य उदाहरणानि भवन्ति. तदनन्तरं किमुच्यते? एकाचः धातोः इति सामानाधिकरण्येन अन्वयेतु इह न स्यात्. गर्दभम् आचष्टे गर्दभयति. इदानीं सः अग्रे वदति. किं वदति? एकाचः इति अस्ति, धातोः इति अनुवर्तते. धातोः अवयवः एकाच् इति अर्थः किमर्थं दीयते भवता? एकाचः धातोः, the simplest way of relating ekachaha and dhatoho is saying a dhatu which is ekach, which is very simple. यस्मिन् धातौ एक एव अज अस्ति, सः एकाच् धातुः। तथा सामानाधिकरण्येन अन्वयः, अन्वयः द्वेधा भवति। व्यधिकरणान्वयः, समानाधिकरण अन्वयः। समानाधिकरण अन्वयः इत्युक्ते किं? विशेषण विशेष्य भावः। उन्नतः वृक्षः, उन्नतशब्देनापि समानः पदार्थः उच्यते, वृक्षः इत्यनेनापि समानः पदार्थः उच्यते। तदा सः अन्वयः समानाधिकरणान्वयः, when both the visheshana and vishesha, that is both shabdas refer to the same object. So whenever we have a samanadhikaranya, we are saying that both of them are referring to a samana adhikarana, the same object. Whereas when I say dhatoho avayavaha ekach, saying ekach dhatuhu is different from saying dhatoho avayavaha ekach. When I say ekach dhatuhu, it is saying that the dhatu has a single ach. Whereas when I say dhatoho ekach, dhatoho is shashti and ekach is prathama. So what I mean is, there is a dhatu which may have multiple ach. Of that I am taking an ekach samudaya. Saeva arthaha atra sutrarthe abhipretah dhatoho avayavaha ekach. Kimartham evam uchyate? Samanadhikaranyena अन्वयं कुर्मः चेत् कः दोषः इति चेत्, एकाचो धातोः इति सामानाधिकरण्येन अन्वयेतु इह न स्यात्। कुत्र न स्यात्? गर्दभयति। उदाहरणं दर्शयति। इदम् उदाहरणम् अस्माभिः दृष्टं। तत्करोति तदा चष्टे इति गर्दभ शब्दात् णिच् प्रत्ययः क्रियते, नामधातुः भवति। ततः क्विप्, तस्मात् पुनः क्विप् प्रत्ययः क्रियते, तत्र णी लोपः। गर्दभी इति नामधातुः, तत्र णिचः लोपे कृते गर्दभ इति भकारान्तः शब्दः भवति। तत्र धातुः अनेकाच् अस्ति. So we saw all this, even the video has the diagram, so you can go back and refer, but it is not an ekach dhatu. If we relate ekach as a direct visheshana to a dhatu, it will not apply in this context, because the dhatu here is anekach. Gardabh iti dhatuhu saha anekach asti. Atayeva dhatoho avayavaha ekach. Gardabh iti dhatuhu tasya avayavaha asti rdabh iti ekach avayavaha. Saha jhashantah asti. Tatra vidyamanasya dakarasya dhakaradeshe krite gardhap iti rupam siddhyati. यदि अत्र समानाधिकरण्येन अन्वयः क्रियते तर्हि गर्धप इति रूपं न सिद्ध्यति इति कौमुद्याः वाक्यम्. Hope you are able to understand the vakya. एकाचो धातोः इति समानाधिकरण्येन अन्वयेतु इह न स्यात्. इह कुत्र? अग्रे वदति गर्दभमाचष्टे गर्दभयति, ततः क्विप् णिलोपः गर्धप. Ayam ekah amshah. So you can see what does Siddhanta Kaumudi add. He gives the sutrartha which is also given in the Laghu Kaumudi. So what has the Laghu Kaumudi edited out are these extra matters. Okay, so one extra explanation the Siddhanta Kaumudi gives is why he has given a slightly convoluted sutrartha rather than directly saying ekachaha jhashantasya dhatoh. द्वितीयः अंशः तेन किमुच्यते? इतः पूर्वं होढः दादेर्धातोर्घः इत्यादिषु सर्वत्र झलि पदान्ते च इति अनुवर्तते किल. होढः इत्यत्र सूत्रार्थः कः अस्ति? होढः इस् 31. सो इट् सेस् हस्य ढहस्य झलि पदान्ते च. दादेर्धातोर्घः सेस् झलि पदान्ते च. पूर्वतन सूत्रेषु सर्वेषु झली पदान्ते च इति दीयते. अत्र तु केवलं पदान्ते च इत्यस्ति. झली इति निवृत्तम्. Nivritti is the opposite of anuvritti. Anuvritti is it is continuing. Nivrittam means it has stopped. Purvatana sutre eva Purvatana sutra paryantam jhali iti bhavati. Asmin sutre jhali ityasya anuvrittihi nasti. Katham nyayate? Jhali iti nivrittam sdhoho grahana samarthyat. Asmin sutre vishishya स्ध्वोः इति सूत्रकारेण उच्यते. कः अर्थः? सकारे परे ध्वशब्दे परे. अत्र सकारः अपि झल् वर्णः, ध्व इत्यत्र धकारः अपि झल् वर्णः. बोथ सकार एंड धकार आर झल् वर्णास्. यदि झलि इति अनुवृत्तिः अस्मिन् सूत्रेपि अस्ति तर्हि विशिष्य स्ध्वोः इति वक्तव्यं नास्ति. If jhali is continuing, he doesn't need to say sdvoho. Because sakara is jhal, you will automatically get it there. Because dhakara is jhal, you will anyway get the bhashbhava there. So sdvoho grahana samarthyat vishishya sakare pare dhvashabde pare bhavati iti paninina uktatvat kim nyayate jhali ityasya anuvrittihi nasti. Yadi anuvrittihi asti tarhi idam vyartham. So this would go waste. When jhaladitva deva tatra siddhyati. Kimartham vishishya sakare pare bhavati dhvashabde pare bhavati iti vaktavyam. Ataha jhali iti nivrittam sdvoho grahana samarthyat tena iha na. Kim prayojanam iti chet sakaram dhvashabdam vihaya अन्येषु झल्वर्णेषु परेषु भष्भावः न भवति. दुग्धम दुह त तत्र क्त प्रत्ययः अस्ति वस्तुतः. तत्र त प्रत्ययस्य धकारः भवति झषस्तथोर्धोधः इत्यनेन. तत्र सकारः नास्ति, ध्वशब्दः नास्ति, झल् वर्णः अस्ति, किन्तु तत्र भष्भावः न भवति. So you will not get it here even if it is followed by a jhal varna. Similarly, dogdha tatrapi trich pratyayah asti. Jhali pare samanya jhal varne pare bhashbhavaha na bhavati padante bhavati sakare pare dhvashabde pare bhavati अन्येषु झल् वर्णेषु परेषु अस्य सूत्रस्य प्रवृत्तिः न भवति. झलीति निवृत्तं स्ध्वोर् ग्रहण सामर्थ्यात् तेन इह न दुग्धं दोग्धा. द्वितीयः अंशः. So he is clarifying that we don't have the anuvritti of jhali in this sutra and it can be inferred by the word sdvoh. तृतीयः अंशः अत्र उच्यते व्यपदेशिवद्भावेन धात्ववयवत्वात् भष्भावः. व्यपदेशिवद्भावः. It is a very frequently used technical term in व्याकरण. व्यपदेशिवद्भावः इति बहुत्र उपयुज्यते. तस्य परिचयम् अत्र कारयति. अत्र कः क्लेशः इति चेत् अस्माभिः किमुक्तम्? अत्र गर्दभयति इत्यत्र गर्धप इति रूपं साधयितुं धातोः अवयवः एकाच् इति उक्तम्. So there is a dhatu and the dhatu has an ekach component, which generally means the dhatu must be something more than ekach. Right? Whenever I say my hand, right? So mama hastaha iti uchyate chet, mama, the organism is always bigger than the organ. So aham kevalam hastaha nasmi. Hastaha, padaha, shiraha, udaram sarvamapi asti. Tatra mama hastaha iti vyavaharaha sambhavati. So wherever you are saying that something belonging to something else, So the dhatoho ekach. The dhatu should be something bigger, of which you have an ekach component. Dhatoho avayavaha ekach. Idanim अस्माकं प्रसंगः कुत्र अस्ति? दुह् इति धातौ अस्ति. तत्र धातुः भिन्नः नास्ति, एकाच भिन्नः नास्ति. We don't have to separate things. So you have samanadhikaranyeena anvaya, which we rejected because it doesn't work for gardabha. So we said vyadhikarana anvaya. So dhatoho ekach. For vyadhikarana, you need two different things. You need a dhatu, and as a part of a dhatu, you need an ekach. So what do I do when the dhatu has only ekach? It does not have anything more. How can I say dhatoho ekach iti prashnaha bhavati? Dhatoho avayavaha ekach nasti, dhatureva ekach asti. Tada kim kurmaha? Katham tatra bhashbhavaha bhavati iti prashnaha. Right? So it's a simple prashna which occurs a lot of times in Vyakarana, which is answered by a concept called Vyapadeshi-vad bhava. So Vyapadeshi-vad bhavaha ityasya avagamanam katham bhaved iti pashyamaha. Tatra paribhasha asti Vyapadeshi-vad ekasmin iti paribhasha. Tatra vyapadeshaha ityasti. Vyapadeshaha nama mukhya vyavaharaha. Atra adhaha pashyamaha nimitta sadbhavat vishishtaha apadeshaha. Mukhyaha vyavaharaha yasya asti saha vyapadeshi. So vyapadeshi vat ekasmin. Apadesha. What is apadesha? Apadeshaha mukhyaha vyavaharaha. Mukhyaha vyavaharaha nama kaha. Idanim trayaha putraha santi kasyachit. Yada trayaha putraha santi, tatra yaha prathamaha putraha saha jyeshthaha, the eldest iti vyavaharaha bhavati. Yaha ante jataha saha kanishtaha. Yaha madhye jataha saha madhyamaha. We use the terms Jyeshtha, Kanishta and Madhyama when there are, like, say 3 children or 4 children. You identify them as this is the eldest, this is the youngest, this is the middle one, and so on. So all these terms are called Mukhya Vyavahara because they are based on Jyeshtha. You're calling the eldest because he is at the beginning of a series of children. Similarly, you're calling the youngest because he came after a series of people. That is Mukhya Vyavahara, which is called Vishishta Apadesha, which is Vyapadesha. That which has Vyapadesha is called Vyapadeshi. Like Dhanam asya asti iti dhani, Vyapadeshaha asya asti iti Vyapadeshi. What do we mean by Vyapadeshi? A term which is used for something on a basis. So nimitta sadbhavat kimapi nimittam syat. To call him Jyeshtha, there is the nimitta, that is there are children born after him and so on. But what happens when, say, a person has only one son? Okay. So when there are multiple children, so there are actually, when you look at the Dharma Shastra, there are also karyas. There are some karyas which say Jyeshtha putrena karaniyam. The elder one has to perform some things. The youngest child has to perform some things, and so on. Right? So there is a context, wider context to it, where there are some kartavyas for the Jyeshtha, some for the Kanishta. Now, if a person has a single son, what do we do there? Would be a question. Now, there is no Vyapadesha. You cannot say, if there is only one child, you cannot say Jyeshtha or Madhyama or Kanishta. Why? There is no nimitta. The nimitta for being Jyeshtha is having, say, brothers or younger siblings. The nimitta for Kanishta is to say having elder siblings. There is nothing. Yastu Vyapadesha Hetu Abhavat. There is no basis for those terms, avidyamana vyapadeshaha. So there is no mukhya vyavahara. You cannot technically term him as Jyeshtha or Kanistha or Madhyama. That is eka. Eka shabdaha atra asahayarthe. बहुभ्यः दिनेभ्यः पूर्वम् अस्माभिः एकशब्दस्य बहवः अर्थाः दृष्टाः. अत्र असहायः. There is a single entity. There is no, when there is a single entity, you cannot use relative terms like elder or younger or whatever, bigger, smaller, whatever you have. Any relative term cannot be used when there is a single entity. Okay. व्याकरणशास्त्रे एवं चेत् अथवा सामान्यतः व्यवहारेपि किं भवति, यथा मया उक्तं धर्मशास्त्रे यदि एक एव पुत्रः अस्ति, ज्येष्ठस्य कर्तव्यमपि तेनैव क्रियते, कनिष्ठस्य कर्तव्यमपि तेनैव क्रियते. It is evident. He does everything. Whatever is given for Jyeshtha also he has to do. Whatever is given for Kanishtha also he has to do. Right? Say if father has say 4 shares of his property, if there is only son, the only son will get all the pieces of property. It's both duty and right. In both cases, he will qualify for both vyavaharas. Right? So the Bhashyakara, this is the actual Vakya from the Bhashya. Mahabhashya is in a very conversational style. So Bhashyakara says, Yatha tarhi bahushu putreshu etad upapannam bhavati, ayam me jyeshthaha, ayam me madhyamaha, ayam me kaniyan iti. Bhavati cha etat ekasminnapi, ayameva me jyeshthaha, ayameva me madhyamaha, ayameva me kaniyan iti. So examples of Bhashya are always very easy. I mean, the language is also fairly easy. So of course, if you have multiple children, you say this is Jyeshtha, this is Kanishtha, this is Madhyama. If there is only one, you say he is himself the eldest, the youngest, everything is only him. So that principle is termed as Vyapadeshivad ekasmin. Vyakarana shastre tasya katham prayogaha iti chet, atra Rama iti adantam angamasti. केवलम अ इत्यस्ति चेत् अ शब्दः अ इत्यस्य अर्थाः सन्ति. विष्णुः इत्यर्थः अस्ति, एकाक्षर शब्दः. इदम् अदन्तम् अंगम इति कथं वदामः? Something ending in a. There is nothing here ending in a. There is only a. Can we call it adanta anga? Yes. How? Vyapadeshivat ekasmin. Eka eva asti chet ayameva adihi, ayameva antyaha. Similarly, I say as is an ajadi dhatu. Ach adau yasya saha. Ajadihi dhatu. I ityeva dhatu asti. Saha ajadihi va iti chet. Am katham ayameva adihi, ayameva antyaha. Bhu a ti yasmat pratyaya vidhihi tadadi pratyayengam. Bhu ityasmat ti pratyayah. Starting from bhu tat adi angam bhavati ityuchyate. Kevalam bhu asti chet tadapi tadadi bhavati va. Starting from that, there is nothing else. Can you still say tadadi? You can. So ekaha asti ched, if there is nothing else also, you can treat the existing one as qualifying for that, right? So similarly, gardabh ityatra rdabh iti dhatvavayavaha. Dhatoho avayavaha asti. It is a part of a dhatu. Whereas in duh, even though the dhatu itself is ekach, vyapadeshivad bhavena ayam api dhatvavayavaha iti pariganayitum shakyate. Even though there is a single ach, you can say this is a dhatvavayava. How? Using the principle of vyapadeshivad bhava. Tadeva atra Siddhanta Kaumudyam uchyate vyapadeshivad bhavena Dhat vavayavatvat bhash bhavaha kutra duh shabde. So even though it is not technically a part of a dhatu, it is the dhatu itself. Using vyapadeshivat bhava, if there is only a single component also, you can treat it as dhat vavayava. It's a very general principle which applies in a lot of places. Ataha tatra dhugh iti bhavati jashtva chartve dhuk iti rupam siddhyati. Dhuk dhugd duhau duhaha shatva chartve dhukshu iti Siddhanta Kaumudyam. So as you can see, for this sutra, it gives 3 extra points. One is about the samanadhikaranyena anvaya, the problem with it. Second is the nivritti of jali. Third one is about vyapadeshivad bhava. Okay. So this is the difference that the Siddhanta Kaumudi has. So sutra by sutra, Laghu Kaumudi gives the bare essence, whereas Siddhanta Kaumudi gives us much more details and more Vyakarana aspects, Siddhanta aspects about the sutras. Astu, atra samapayamaha. येनाक्षर समाम्नाय अधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं नत्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां गुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदीम्. So there's just one comment which I want to answer. By looking at all these, Samskrita is very hard. No, actually, it is not that Samskrita is hard. This is not Samskrita, this is Shastra. Okay, so there is a difference, right? So when we talk about Samskrita as a language at the basic level, it's easy. There is not much. I mean, all this you don't have to look at it. Right? So this is Shastra. And Shastra is refinement in thinking, which is hard. Whichever Shastra you go, whether it is Vedanta where you need to comprehend Brahman, or Vyakarana where you need to comprehend the subtleties of the language. Right? So that is the beauty of Shastras and the language which serves as the base of the Shastras. Right? So it allows you so much of intellectual expansion. Right? So why do we study all these Shastras is also a question. Right? So it is a training for subtle thinking. Right? So it's very easy to not get into any of this, which is fine. But the more and more we train our brains to think that way, the more and more it becomes capable of grasping the refined aspects of ourselves, of the existence. Astu, samapayamaha. I just realized that we did not discuss. There was one question which was left over from last class, which I totally forgot. We will do it in the next class. Agrima saptahe abhyasavargah Vagvardhini vargah ubhayam bhavishyati. Adya nutana trishyamshanam aropanam bhavishyati. So based on that, we will discuss in the next week.